The city never slept. Its streets buzzed with life, even in the dead of night, as neon signs flickered and holographic advertisements painted the air with promises of wealth and luxury. But for Cale, the endless glow of the megacity only served as a reminder of how far he had fallen. He sat slumped on a grease-stained stool inside his tiny garage, staring blankly at the pile of unpaid bills scattered across his workbench. The numbers blurred together, rent overdue, utilities cut off, loan sharks calling every hour. But the meaning was clear. He was drowning. Cale ran a hand through his unkempt hair, sighing deeply. At 28, he should have been building a future, not scrambling to keep one together. His father's prolonged illness had drained every penny they had, leaving behind nothing but debt when the old man finally passed away. Now, Cale worked day and night fixing hovercars and outdated drones just to stay afloat. But no matter how hard he tried, it wasn't enough. Every knock on the door made his heart race, fearing it would be another collector demanding payment, or worse. Tonight, though, the knock came differently. It wasn't loud or angry. It was soft, almost hesitant. Cale frowned, setting down his wrench and wiping his oil-streaked hands on his jumpsuit. Who could that be? Most people avoided this part of town unless they needed repairs, and even then, they usually called ahead. He opened the door cautiously, squinting against the harsh glare of the streetlights outside. Standing there was a woman unlike anyone he'd ever seen. She was tall and slender, her skin shimmering faintly, as if dusted with starlight. Her eyes were what caught him off guard, deep pools of violet that seemed to hold entire galaxies within them. She wore a sleek silver coat that hugged her figure, and despite the cold wind whipping through the alleyway, she looked completely unfazed. "Can I help you?" Cale asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Strangers didn't come knocking on his door without a reason, especially ones who looked like they belonged in some high-end commercial rather than his rundown garage. "I believe I can help you," the woman replied, her tone smooth and measured. There was an odd cadence to her speech, as if each word carried weight beyond its surface meaning. Cale raised an eyebrow. "Help me? Lady, unless you're here to pay my debts, I don't see how." To his astonishment, she smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "Actually, that is precisely why I'm here." For a moment, Cale thought he'd misheard her, or maybe she was mocking him. Either way, he crossed his arms defensively. "Look, I don't know who sent you, but I'm not interested in scams or charity." "It's neither," she said calmly. "My name is Vera, and before you dismiss me entirely, let me assure you, I have the means to settle your debts. Completely. All I ask in return is your assistance." Cale blinked, unsure whether to laugh or walk away. This had to be a joke. No one walked into his life offering salvation out of the blue. Still, something about her demeanor stopped him from shutting the door in her face. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in her voice, or the way she stood so still, exuding an aura of calm authority. Whatever it was, it intrigued him. "You want me to do what, exactly?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. "Fix your spaceship, because I've got enough problems without adding interstellar mechanics to the list." Vera chuckled softly, the sound melodic yet distant. "Not quite. What I need requires more effort than repairing machinery. But rest assured, your skills will prove invaluable." Cale hesitated. On one hand, this whole situation screamed trouble. On the other, he couldn't ignore the desperation clawing at his chest. If there was even a sliver of truth to her offer, it might be worth hearing her out. After all, what did he have to lose? "Fine," he said finally, stepping aside. "Come in. But if this turns out to be some kind of prank, I swear—" "It isn't," Vera interrupted, brushing past him with an air of certainty. She glanced around the cluttered garage, taking in the tools hanging on the walls and the half-dismantled engine sitting on the workbench. "You're resourceful. That's good. We'll need that quality where we're going." "We," Cale echoed, closing the door behind her. "Whoa, hold on. Where are we going?" Vera turned to face him, her violet eyes locking onto his with an intensity that made him feel both exposed and curious. Somewhere dangerous, somewhere no human has ventured before. But first tell me, are you willing to take a risk for freedom? Cale opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. Freedom sounded tempting. Too tempting. Yet, as he studied Vera's unwavering gaze, he realized she wasn't asking lightly. Whatever she wanted, it came with consequences. Big ones. And yet, as much as his instincts screamed caution, his gut told him to say yes. Because sometimes, the only way out of the darkness was to leap into the unknown. Cale stared at Vera, his mind racing. Her offer hung in the air like a tempting yet dangerous fruit, sweet on the surface but laced with thorns underneath. He wanted to believe her, to trust that this shimmering stranger could erase the mountain of debt crushing him. But every instinct told him there was more to the story than she was letting on. "Hold on," Cale said finally, crossing his arms. "You're telling me you'll pay off all my debts, just like that, if I help you? No strings attached?" Vera tilted her head slightly, her violet eyes glinting under the dim light of the garage. "Not exactly," she admitted. "There are challenges ahead, risks involved. But if you succeed, your life will change forever." "Risks?" Cale echoed, his voice rising. "What kind of risks? You haven't even told me what you want me to do." She paused, as if weighing how much to reveal. Then, with a slow exhale, she began explaining. "I am searching for something, a relic of immense value. It is hidden deep within uncharted territories, guarded by forces hostile to outsiders. Retrieving it will require courage, resourcefulness, and perhaps sacrifice." Cale frowned. "A relic? Like some ancient artifact or treasure?" "In a way," Vera replied cryptically. "It holds great significance, not just for me, but for others who would misuse its power. That is why we must act quickly." Her words did little to ease Cale's unease. Instead, they only added fuel to the fire of doubt burning inside him. "Okay, let's say I agree to this crazy plan. What happens after we find this thing? Do I get a pat on the back and sent home? Or does the sacrifice part come into play then?" Vera didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into the folds of her silver coat and pulled out a small device, a sleek, metallic cube no larger than her palm. She pressed a button on its side, and suddenly, holographic images sprang to life in the air between them. Maps of distant planets, strange symbols, and fragmented blueprints flickered before Cale's eyes. "This is where we're going," she explained, gesturing toward the hologram. "The journey won't be easy. We'll face dangers beyond anything you've encountered. But I assure you, the reward will outweigh the risk." Cale leaned closer, studying the projections skeptically. The planets looked barren and hostile, their surfaces scarred by craters and jagged cliffs. Whatever Vera sought, it clearly wasn't lying around waiting to be picked up. Still, despite his reservations, he couldn't deny the allure of freedom. If she truly meant what she said, this could be his chance to start over, to escape the suffocating grip of debt collectors and rebuild his shattered life. But there was one problem: trust. How could he possibly believe someone so enigmatic, so otherworldly? For all he knew, she might be leading him into a trap, or worse. "You still haven't answered my question," Cale said firmly, meeting her gaze. "Why me? Why pick some broke mechanic from the slums when you could hire anyone else?" Vera smiled faintly, though there was no humor in it. "Because not everyone possesses your unique combination of skills and resilience. You've survived against impossible odds, Cale. That makes you extraordinary." Her compliment caught him off guard, stirring emotions he hadn't felt in years. Hope, pride, maybe even a flicker of belief in himself. But just as quickly, suspicion crept back in. "And if I say no?" he challenged. "What happens then?" Her expression hardened ever so slightly. "Then you remain here, buried under the weight of your obligations, and I move on, finding another ally." But know this: time is not on our side. The longer we delay, the greater the danger becomes for both of us." Kale swallowed hard, the gravity of her words sinking in. She wasn't bluffing. He could see it in her unwavering stance and hear it in her steady voice. This wasn't just about money or convenience. It was about survival. His survival. Hers. Maybe even something bigger. He glanced at the holograms again, then back at Vera. "Fine," he muttered reluctantly. "I'm in, but if this goes sideways, don't expect me to stick around." "Understood," she replied, her tone neutral. Without another word, she deactivated the cue and slipped it back into her coat. "We leave tonight. Pack lightly. You won't need much where we're headed." As Vera turned to exit the garage, Kale hesitated. Something nagged at the edges of his thoughts, a gnawing feeling that he was stepping onto a path he couldn't turn back from. Yet, as he watched her walk away, her silhouette glowing faintly in the dim light, he realized he had no choice. Staying behind meant certain ruin. Going with her offered at least a sliver of hope. With a heavy sigh, Kale grabbed a duffel bag and began stuffing it with essentials: clothes, tools, and a few personal mementos. As he zipped it shut, he caught sight of an old photograph taped to the wall, a picture of him and his father, smiling proudly beside their first repaired hover car. Guilt tugged at his chest. Was he doing the right thing? Or was he abandoning everything his father had worked for? Shaking off the thought, Kale slung the bag over his shoulder and locked up the garage. Outside, Vera waited patiently, leaning against a sleek black vehicle that hummed softly with energy. Its design was unlike anything he'd seen before: smooth curves, glowing accents, and an aura of advanced technology. "Ready?" she asked, opening the passenger door. Kale nodded, climbing inside. As the car lifted silently into the air, leaving the crumbling city behind, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was trading one form of danger for another. But deep down, he also knew this was his only shot at redemption. The night sky stretched endlessly above them, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly bright. For the first time in years, Kale allowed himself to dream of freedom, of adventure, of a future untethered by chains of debt. Little did he know, those dreams would soon collide with realities far stranger and darker than he could imagine. The journey began with a silence so profound it felt almost sacred. Kale sat stiffly in the passenger seat of Vera's sleek spacecraft, his eyes darting between the glowing dashboard and the endless expanse of stars outside the window. The ship moved effortlessly through the void, its engines humming softly, a stark contrast to the clunky hovercars he was used to repairing. Everything about this moment felt surreal, as if he had stepped into a dream, where reality bent and twisted just beyond comprehension. Vera piloted the vessel with practiced ease, her hands gliding over the controls like an artist painting on canvas. She hadn't spoken much since they left Earth, and Kale found himself growing increasingly restless. The unanswered questions swirling in his mind demanded attention, but he hesitated to break the quiet. Something about her presence commanded respect, or perhaps fear. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, Kale cleared his throat. "So, you said we're going to some uncharted territory. Care to give me more details?" Vera glanced at him briefly before returning her focus to the controls. "We are heading to a planet known as Caliph Prime," she replied. "It lies on the edge of explored space, far from human reach. Its surface is barren and treacherous, inhabited only by scavengers and mercenaries. The relic we seek, the Aether Shard, is buried deep within its ruins." "Aether Shard," Kale echoed, furrowing his brow. "Sounds fancy. What exactly is it?" "It is difficult to explain." Vera paused, choosing her words carefully. "To my people, it was a symbol of unity and power. It contains fragments of our collective consciousness, memories, knowledge, emotions, all preserved within its crystalline structure. When my civilization fell, the shard was lost. Now I must retrieve it to restore what was broken." Kel frowned, trying to process her explanation. Your people? You mean those shimmering eyes and glowing skin aren't just for show, huh? You're not exactly human, are you? No, she admitted simply. I am Berindor, one of the last survivors of my kind. My race once thrived among the stars, guiding lesser civilizations toward peace and prosperity. But we were betrayed, destroyed by forces that sought to claim our power for themselves. Her voice carried a weight of sorrow that made Kel uncomfortable. He shifted in his seat, unsure how to respond. And now you think finding this shard will bring your people back? That seems ambitious. It is not about bringing them back, Vera corrected gently. It is about preserving their legacy and preventing history from repeating itself. The shard's energy could reshape reality if misused, if it falls into the wrong hands. She trailed off, leaving the implication hanging heavily in the air. Cale didn't need her to finish the sentence to understand the stakes. Whatever they were chasing, it wasn't just valuable. It was dangerous. As hours passed, the ship approached its destination. Through the viewport, Calith Prime came into view, a desolate wasteland of jagged cliffs, cracked plains, and swirling dust storms. The planet looked dead, devoid of life or color. Yet, scattered across its surface were remnants of ancient structures, crumbling towers, and shattered domes hinting at a forgotten past. This place gives me the creeps, Kel muttered under his breath as they descended toward the surface. Trust your instincts, Vera advised. This world has claimed many lives. Stay vigilant. Once they landed, Kel stepped out of the ship, his boots sinking slightly into the powdery ground. The air was thin and icy, forcing him to pull his jacket tighter around himself. Despite the cold, sweat trickled down his spine. Every shadow seemed to shift unnaturally. Every gust of wind carried whispers he couldn't quite make out. Vera led the way, her movements fluid and purposeful. She carried a small device that emitted soft pulses of light, scanning the area for signs of the shard's location. Cale followed closely behind, clutching a toolkit slung over his shoulder. Though he doubted wrenches and screwdrivers would be much use against alien ruins, having something familiar gave him a sense of control. They soon arrived at the entrance of a massive structure half buried in the dirt. Its walls were etched with intricate carvings that glowed faintly in the dim light. Vera ran her fingers over the symbols, murmuring words in a language Cale didn't recognize. With a low rumble, the doors slid open, revealing a dark corridor stretching into the unknown. You sure about this? Cale asked nervously, peering into the shadows. Feels like we're walking straight into a horror movie. We have no choice, Vera replied firmly. The shard lies within. Be ready for anything. Inside, the air grew colder, and the walls pulsed faintly with an eerie blue light. Strange sounds echoed through the corridors, clicks, whirs, and distant groans that set Cal's teeth on edge. He kept close to Vera, his heart pounding as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. At one point, they encountered a barrier, a wall of shimmering energy blocking their path. Vera studied it intently, then turned to Cal. This requires mechanical intervention. Can you disable it? Cal examined the mechanism, noting its complex design. It resembled nothing he'd ever seen before, but the principles were similar enough. Using tools from his kit, he tinkered with the panel until the barrier flickered and dissipated. Nice work, Vera said, though her tone remained neutral. They pressed onward, navigating traps and solving puzzles that tested both their skills and resolve. But as they delved further, Cal began noticing changes in himself. His head throbbed occasionally, and flashes of light danced at the edges of his vision. Once, he swore he heard voices calling his name, though when he turned, no one was there. Are you feeling all right? Vera asked, casting a concerned glance his way. I'm fine, Cal lied, rubbing his temples. Deep down, he wondered if the shard's influence was already affecting him, or if being near Vera herself was altering him in ways he couldn't yet comprehend. Their journey culminated in a cavernous chamber bathed in golden light. At its center floated the Aether Shard, a crystalline object radiating waves of energy that made the air hum. It was breathtakingly beautiful, yet undeniably ominous. "We've found it," Vera whispered, her voice filled with reverence. Kale stared at the shard, awestruck. For a brief moment, he forgot all his doubts and fears. All he could think was, "This is why we came." But as they approached, the ground trembled violently, and a sinister laugh echoed through the chamber. From the shadows emerged figures clad in armor, their weapons trained on Kale and Vera. "Looks like we've got company," Kale muttered grimly, gripping his toolkit tightly. Vera stepped forward, her expression hardening. "Stay behind me," she ordered. "This isn't over yet." The armored figures emerged from the shadows, their weapons gleaming ominously under the shard's golden glow. They were mercenaries, judging by their rugged appearance and the insignia painted on their armor. A jagged black star against a crimson background. Their leader stepped forward, a tall man with scars crisscrossing his face and an energy rifle slung casually over one shoulder. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice dripping with malice. "Looks like we got ourselves some treasure hunters. Didn't think anyone would be stupid enough to come here." Kale instinctively moved closer to Vera, his heart hammering in his chest. "Who are these guys?" he whispered. "Scavengers," Vera replied tersely. "They've been hunting for the shard too. Likely hired by someone who knows its true value." The mercenary leader smirked, clearly enjoying the tension in the room. "Hand over the shard, and maybe we'll let you leave with your lives. Or don't, and see how long you last against us." Vera didn't flinch. Instead, she raised her hand, palm outward, and a faint shimmer of energy began to form around her fingers. Kale watched in awe and slight terror as the air crackled with power. Whatever she was about to do, it wasn't human. "Leave now," Vera said calmly, her tone ice-cold. "You're outmatched." The leader laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed through the chamber. "Big talk for someone outnumbered. Boys, take care of them." Before Kale could react, chaos erupted. The mercenaries opened fire, bolts of energy zipping past their heads as Vera unleashed her own counterattack. A wave of shimmering light surged from her hand, deflecting several shots and sending 2 mercenaries sprawling to the ground. The others scattered, taking cover behind pillars and debris. Kale ducked behind a fallen column, clutching his toolkit like a lifeline. This wasn't part of the plan. He wasn't trained for combat or running headfirst into danger. But there was no turning back now, not when they were so close to the shard. "Hey," he shouted at Vera, who was weaving between attacks with fluid precision. "What do I do?" "Stay alive," she called back, narrowly dodging a blast that left a scorch mark on the wall behind her. Realizing he couldn't rely solely on Vera, Kale forced himself to think. His eyes darted around the chamber, searching for anything he could use to even the odds. Then he spotted it, a control panel near the entrance, glowing faintly with indicators suggesting it powered the chamber's defenses. If he could disable it, maybe they'd gain the upper hand. Dodging stray blasts, Kale sprinted toward the panel, using overturned rubble as cover. Bullets whizzed past him, kicking up dust where he'd just been standing. His lungs burned, but adrenaline kept him moving. When he finally reached the panel, he dropped to his knees and yanked open the access hatch. Inside, wires and circuits pulsed with alien technology far beyond what he'd ever worked with before. Still, the principles remained the same. Using his multi-tool, he began rerouting connections, praying he wouldn't trigger something worse. Meanwhile, Vera continued holding off the mercenaries with bursts of energy that seemed to drain her strength. Her movements grew slower, more deliberate, as if each attack cost her dearly. She glanced toward Kale, worry flickering across her face. "Hurry," she urged, barely dodging another volley of shots. "I'm working on it," Kale snapped, sweat dripping down his forehead. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the lights dimmed, and the hum of power faded. The chamber fell eerily quiet, except for the furious shouts of the mercenaries realizing their advantage had vanished. Seizing the moment, Vera unleashed one final burst of energy, creating a barrier that trapped the remaining mercenaries against the far wall. Exhausted, she staggered backward, leaning heavily against a pillar. "You did it," she said breathlessly, nodding toward Kale. He stood up, brushing dust off his hands. "Yeah, but next time, maybe warn me before we walk into a firefight." Vera managed a weak smile. Noted. Despite the victory, neither of them relaxed. The mercenaries were subdued, but the shard still hovered tantalizingly in the center of the chamber, its golden light casting eerie shadows on the walls. As they approached it cautiously, Kel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of their troubles. "What happens now?" he asked, eyeing the crystalline object warily. "Do we just grab it?" "It's not that simple," Vera explained. "The shard is bound to ancient safeguards. Removing it without understanding its mechanisms could trigger catastrophic consequences. So what? We solve another puzzle." Kel groaned. "Great, just great." Vera knelt beside the pedestal holding the shard, studying the intricate carvings etched into its base. "We need to synchronize with its energy field. Only then can we safely retrieve it." "And how exactly do we do that?" Kel asked skeptically. She hesitated, then turned to look at him. "I will handle most of it, but I may require your assistance again. Your mechanical expertise, and perhaps something else, will be crucial." "Something else?" Kel repeated, suspicion creeping into his voice. "What aren't you telling me?" Vera sighed, her expression softening. "The shard responds to emotions, memories, even intentions. It tests those who seek it, probing their minds for weaknesses. You've already begun experiencing side effects. Headaches, visions. That means it recognizes your presence. Whether that's good or bad remains to be seen." Kel swallowed hard, glancing at the shard again. Its light seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, drawing him closer despite his unease. "So basically, it's sentient." "Fantastic." "It's more than that," Vera corrected gently. "It holds fragments of my people's essence, their hopes, fears, dreams. Interacting with it is like stepping into a collective consciousness. For me, it will feel familiar. For you—" She trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. "Let me guess," Kel muttered. "Painful. Dangerous. Both." "Potentially," she admitted. "But if we succeed, everything changes. For both of us." Kel stared at her, weighing the risks. Part of him wanted to turn back, to abandon this insane quest, and return to his old life. But deep down, he knew he couldn't. Not after coming this far. "All right," he said finally, steeling himself. "Tell me what to do." Vera nodded, placing her hands on the pedestal. "Focus on the shard. Let it guide you. And whatever happens, trust me." As they connected with the shard's energy field, the chamber filled with a blinding light. Memories flooded Cal's mind. His father's laughter, the weight of failure, moments of joy and sorrow colliding in a kaleidoscope of emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he struggled to hold on, clinging to the image of freedom promised by Vera. Through the storm of sensations, he heard her voice, steady and reassuring. "We're almost there." And then, silence. When the light faded, the shard rested quietly in Vera's hands, its glow softer now, almost serene. But Kale collapsed to his knees, gasping for air as pain shot through his skull. "You okay?" Vera asked, kneeling beside him. He nodded weakly, though his vision swam. "Just give me a minute." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Cal realized something fundamental had shifted, not just in their mission, but within himself. Whatever bond had formed between them during the battle and the shard's activation, it ran deeper than mere survival. Together, they had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious. But at a cost neither fully understood yet. The shard pulsed faintly in Vera's hands as they made their way back through the labyrinthine ruins of Caliph Prime. Its golden glow cast long, flickering shadows on the walls, but Kale couldn't shake the feeling that those shadows were watching him. His head still throbbed from the ordeal in the chamber, and his thoughts felt disjointed, like fragments of memories he didn't recognize slipping in and out of focus. "Are you sure this thing is safe to carry?" Kale asked, glancing nervously at the crystalline object. "Feels like it's alive or something." "It is alive," Vera replied, her voice low and measured. "In a sense, the shard contains pieces of my people's consciousness, not just knowledge, but emotions, desires, regrets. It reacts to those who hold it, amplifying what lies within them." Kel frowned. "So, what does it see in me?" Vera hesitated before answering. "That's difficult to say. But whatever it showed you during the synchronization, those visions, those feelings, they weren't random. They were reflections of your true self." Her words unsettled him more than he cared to admit. He had seen glimpses of his past, the good, the bad, the painful, but also flashes of things he couldn't explain. Star-filled skies stretching endlessly, voices calling his name in languages he didn't understand, and an overwhelming sense of longing for something he couldn't quite grasp. Was that really him? Or was it the shard playing tricks on his mind? As they navigated the crumbling corridors, tension simmered between them. Kel couldn't ignore the growing suspicion gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. For all her talk of unity and redemption, Vera remained an enigma, a being whose motivations seemed noble yet distant, almost alien. And now, with the shard in her possession, she radiated an aura of quiet power that both awed and unnerved him. "You never told me what happens next," Kel said finally, breaking the silence. "We've got the shard. Now what? Do we just fly off into the sunset? Mission accomplished." Vera stopped mid-step, turning to face him. Her violet eyes shimmered faintly in the dim light, unreadable yet piercing. "It's not that simple," she admitted. "The shard alone isn't enough. To restore my people's legacy and prevent its misuse, I need to activate it. But doing so requires immense energy and sacrifice." "What kind of sacrifice?" Kel pressed, his voice tinged with unease. She looked away, her expression guarded. "I haven't decided yet. But know this. Activating the shard will alter reality itself. It could heal wounds, mend broken worlds, or tear them apart further." Kel stared at her, his stomach sinking. "Wait, hold on. You're saying this little rock has the power to rewrite existence? That sounds insane, dangerous. Why would anyone want that kind of thing floating around?" "Exactly," Vera said sharply. "Which is why I must ensure it never falls into the wrong hands. If I fail, others will exploit its power for destruction. My people learned that lesson the hard way." Her tone carried a weight of finality that left no room for argument. Still, Kale couldn't suppress the rising tide of doubt. Something about her plan felt incomplete, as if she were holding back crucial details. And given everything they'd been through, he deserved answers. "You keep talking about my people," he said, crossing his arms. "But how do I know you're not using me to bring them back? What if activating the shard doesn't just restore memories, it resurrects them too? Where does that leave me?" "Huh." Vera's gaze softened, though her resolve didn't waver. "You think I'm manipulating you. That's understandable. But trust me when I say this isn't about revenge or conquest. My people are gone, Kale. Nothing can change that. All I seek is to preserve their legacy, to make sure their sacrifices weren't in vain." Kale opened his mouth to argue, but the words caught in his throat. There was sincerity in her voice, a raw vulnerability that made it hard to dismiss her outright. Yet deep down, he couldn't fully let go of his suspicions. How could he, when every step forward seemed to come with another hidden cost? They reached the exit of the ruins just as the first rays of sunlight pierced the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the desolate landscape. The wind whipped fiercely, carrying with it the scent of dust and decay. Ahead, their ship waited, sleek and silent against the barren backdrop. Before they could board, however, movement caught Cal's eye. A figure emerged from behind a jagged cliff, a lone mercenary, bloodied but determined, clutching a weapon in one hand. It was the leader from earlier, his scared face twisted with fury. "You think you can just walk away with it?" he snarled, raising his rifle. "Not happening." Cal instinctively stepped in front of Vera, shielding her despite knowing full well he was no match for armed combat. "We don't have time for this," he snapped. Vera gently pushed him aside, stepping forward. "Stand down," she commanded, her voice cold and authoritative. "You're outnumbered now." The mercenary laughed bitterly. "Oh, I'm not alone." With a sharp whistle, reinforcements appeared, surrounding them. More scavengers, armed to the teeth, their expressions grim and resolute. Cal's heart sank. This was it, the moment where all their efforts unraveled. Outnumbered and outgunned, there was no clear path to escape. But then, something unexpected happened. The shard in Vera's hands began to glow brighter, its light intensifying until it illuminated the entire area. The mercenaries froze, shielding their eyes as whispers filled the air, voices overlapping in countless tongues, haunting and melodic. "What's going on?" Cal shouted over the din. "The shard is responding," Vera replied, her voice barely audible. "It knows we're in danger." Suddenly, the ground trembled violently, and cracks spread across the surface, swallowing several mercenaries whole. The rest scrambled to retreat, abandoning their weapons in panic. Within moments, the attackers were gone, leaving Cal and Vera standing amidst chaos. Breathing heavily, Cal turned to Vera. "Okay, that was intense. What the hell just happened?" "The shard protects itself, and those connected to it," she explained, her grip tightening on the artifact. "But such displays come at a price. Its energy is finite." Cal stared at her, realization dawning. "So every time it does something like that, it drains you too, doesn't it?" Vera nodded silently, her exhaustion evident in the slight slump of her shoulders. For the first time since meeting her, Cal saw vulnerability in Vera, not just physical, but emotional. She wasn't invincible. She was carrying the weight of her people's hopes on her own. And now, with the shard pulsing softly in her hands, he realized she needed him more than ever. "Let's get out of here," he said firmly, leading her toward the ship. "We'll figure the rest out later." As they lifted off, leaving Caliph Prime behind, Cal glanced at the shard one last time. Whatever secrets it held, whatever truths it revealed, he knew one thing for certain. Their journey was far from over, and the choices they made next would define not just their fates, but possibly the fate of countless others. The ship soared through the void, its engines humming softly as Caliph Prime faded into the distance. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy with unspoken tension. Cal sat slumped in his seat, staring at the shard cradled in Vera's hands. Its golden glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, casting shifting patterns of light across the cabin. Despite its beauty, the artifact radiated an unsettling energy that made Cal's skin prickle. "You're hiding something," Cal said abruptly, breaking the silence. His voice was firm but tinged with frustration. "You've been holding back since day one. What aren't you telling me?" Vera didn't respond immediately. She kept her gaze fixed on the shard, her expression unreadable. Finally, she sighed and turned to face him. "You're right," she admitted quietly. "There are things I haven't told you, but not because I wanted to deceive you, because I feared how you might react." Cal leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Try me." Vera hesitated, then spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Activating the shard isn't just about restoring my people's legacy. It's also about sealing away a force far greater than anything we've encountered, a darkness that threatens to consume everything. My people created the shard as both a beacon of hope and a prison for this entity. When they fell, so did the safeguards keeping it contained. Kale blinked, processing her words. Darkness. You mean like some kind of cosmic monster? In a way, Vera replied. It is ancient, primal, and insatiable. It feeds on fear, despair, and chaos. If unleashed, it will spread unchecked, devouring worlds until nothing remains. And activating the shard stops it? Kale asked skeptically. It strengthens the seal, but only temporarily, Vera explained. To fully contain it requires merging with the shard itself. Someone must become its anchor, binding their consciousness to its essence. Kale froze, his blood running cold. Wait, let me guess. You're volunteering for that role. Her silence confirmed his worst fears. He stood up abruptly, pacing the cramped cabin. No, absolutely not. There has to be another way. You can't just sacrifice yourself like that. There is no other way, Vera said firmly, though her voice trembled slightly. If I don't do this, the darkness will break free. Billions, perhaps trillions, will suffer. This is why I came here. This is why I sought your help. But why me? Cal demanded, throwing his hands up in exasperation. I'm nobody, just some broke mechanic from Earth. How am I supposed to live with knowing I helped send you to your death? You're more than you realize, Vera said softly, rising to meet him. Her violet eyes bore into his, filled with a mixture of sorrow and determination. From the moment I met you, I saw potential within you. Courage, resilience, ingenuity, qualities rare even among my own kind. That's why the shard responded to you. It recognized those traits. Kale shook his head, refusing to accept her explanation. That doesn't make it okay. You saved me, gave me a chance to start over. And now you expect me to stand by while you throw your life away. I'm asking you to trust me, Vera countered, her tone unwavering despite the pain evident in her expression. Trust that my sacrifice will mean something. Trust that together, we can protect countless lives, even if mine is lost in the process. Kale clenched his fists, torn between anger and helplessness. Part of him wanted to argue further, to demand alternatives or insist on finding another solution. But deep down, he knew she was right. He had seen glimpses of the darkness she described. The whispers, the visions, the overwhelming sense of dread. Whatever lurked beyond the veil, it was real. And without the shard, there would be no stopping it. Fine, he muttered finally, sinking back into his seat. But I'm not letting you do this alone. If you're going to merge with the shard, I'll help every step of the way. No arguments. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Vera's lips. Thank you, she whispered. Your support means more than you know. Hours later, they arrived at their destination. A massive asteroid floating in the emptiness of space. Its surface shimmered with crystalline formations, glowing faintly under the distant light of a dying star. According to Vera, this was the site of the original containment ritual, a place imbued with residual energy capable of amplifying the shard's power. Word of his journey spread quickly, though few believed his story. To most, tales of alien artifacts and cosmic forces sounded like fiction, the ramblings of a man who'd spent too much time staring at the stars. But some listened, scientists, philosophers, dreamers, who saw glimpses of truth in his words. Together, they formed a small coalition dedicated to studying the shard's influence and preserving the knowledge Vera had entrusted to them. Through their efforts, fragments of the Arinder civilization began to resurface, not just memories, but echoes of their culture, their wisdom, their ideals. Artifacts long buried in forgotten corners of the galaxy were rediscovered, piecing together a narrative of a people who had once guided humanity toward progress. And though Vera herself was gone, her presence lingered in every discovery, every breakthrough. But the changes weren't limited to dusty archives or academic circles. Across the planet, strange phenomena began occurring, events defying explanation yet hinting at something greater. Crops grew overnight in barren fields, curing famine-stricken regions. Mysterious healings saved lives otherwise deemed hopeless. Even the skies occasionally shimmered with hues resembling Vera's skin, casting an otherworldly glow over cities and countrysides alike. Rumors spread of a guardian watching over humanity, a figure appearing at the edges of explored space, guiding lost travelers and protecting against unseen threats. Some claimed to have seen her, standing tall amidst the stars, her violet eyes filled with both sorrow and hope. Others dismissed these accounts as mere legends, born from humanity's innate need for heroes. But Cale knew better. He didn't see her, not directly, but he felt her presence, subtle yet undeniable, woven into the fabric of reality itself. One evening, months after his return, Cale found himself standing on the rooftop of his rebuilt garage, gazing at the night sky. The air was cool, carrying the scent of rain, and the stars twinkled brightly above. In his hand, he held a small photograph, the same picture of him and his father that had once adorned the wall of his old workspace. Only now someone new had been added to the frame. Vera, her shimmering form standing beside them, as if she belonged there. "You kept your promise," Cale whispered, raising the photo toward the heavens. "You gave me a second chance. Now it's my turn to make sure it counts." As he lowered the picture, a single star flared brighter than the rest, lingering for a moment before fading back into the tapestry of light. Whether it was coincidence or something more, Cale couldn't say. But in that moment, he felt a sense of peace, a quiet assurance that Vera's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. Below, the city continued its ceaseless hum, oblivious to the battles fought and won in the depths of space. Yet, somewhere deep within its veins, change stirred. Seeds planted by an alien woman and nurtured by a broken mechanic began to sprout, promising a future where humanity might rise above its flaws and reach for the stars. And as Cale descended into the warmth of his workshop, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, he allowed himself a small smile. The debt had been paid, not in currency, but in courage, compassion, and hope. And though the road ahead remained uncertain, one thing was clear: Vera's light would never fade.